Welcome to the Evening Review. My name is Sukhana Klake, and joining us once again is Joyce Muzengua of the LPM Human Rights Desk. Welcome back to the Evening Review.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Poland has set a new demand for payment from Germany for what has been for what can be seen as being war crimes. Now, this demand runs into the trillions of dollars. If one had to compare that demand that Poland is putting on the table, what do you make of the amount that German government had previously offered to the descendants of the genocide through government?
The history of reparation comes a long way. And Germany in itself is a claimant of reparations. I remember in the 1800s, a war that took place between Germany and France. Germany claimed reparations, and the reparations that were paid by France to Germany contributed significantly to the German economy at that time. It rejuvenated that economy significantly at that time. So Germany has a clear comprehension of the impact of reparations, especially when harm is perpetrated and harm on an extensive scale. So the claims that were offered by Germany, of course, as we the sentiments, according to the sentiments that we've had last year, is ridiculous compared to the harm that was perpetrated. And the local communities, the affected communities in Namibia, did hand documents to the government to look into, so that the government can therefore then derive their quantum from those documents. And there were two claims that were made. One by Honorable Mamberwa, the former president of SWANU, that amounted to 900 million. And the other one by the chiefs that move along with the government that amounted to, I think, 17 trillion, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, then that will be given over the years according to the different generations. The NTLA and OTA also have a quantum, but they wanted actuarial signs, and through negotiations, so that quantum is then informed in that manner. So we need to have negotiations, and we need to together come to a clear understanding as to what would I think that the damage perpetrated will amount to today, of course using actuarial science. And once both are, of course, given the contingencies of drought and all these things, what would it amount to? Both parties need to come to an understanding that it will amount up to this. Both parties, as per international law, need to come to a clear understanding that what had the harm not been perpetrated, where will these people be? So after negotiations, after extensive negotiations between the two parties, the affected and the perpetrator, then a quantum will be reached. So the negotiations claimed by the Scandinavian countries today makes a lot of sense if it has to amount to 3 trillion. And when you compare that to the harm that was perpetrated, the agricultural sector alone today amounts to 40 billion. The agricultural sector alone. And that is one of the sectors that were affected or severely, totally affected by the genocide, because they released ordinances, the 1907 ordinances and 1905 ordinances that clearly stipulated that these communities are not allowed to own land or to own cattle, and that if they want to, they should report to the governor. And of course, at that time, they had completely lost everything, and they were captured, pushed into when the reserves were closed, they were pushed into forced labor and into native reserves and all those things. So at that time, really, it did not happen. So when one looks at it from that angle, given that the agricultural sector is comprised of land and cattle, amongst others, was deprived, that the affected communities were completely deprived of. And today, if it amounts up to at least 40 billion Namibian dollars, what will 18 billion Namibian dollars do? So the claims of 3 trillion make a whole lot of sense, and we are reasoning in something along those lines too, that it cannot be less than 1 trillion, and we want the coming generations to also have a decision on this reparation. So it has to be given over the years and over generations. It won't make sense if you say 30 years. We don't want it over 30 years. We want it over generations, maybe for the 10 generations to come. So that is the type of reparations that one would talk about. And it needs to entail all the 5 components of reparations. Reparations, that is not only the money. You have guarantees of non-repetition, which includes things like a public apology and all those things. And then you have, and even for guarantees of non-repetition, you have to pay. So pay me the 3 trillion, for instance, for the lives lost and all those things. And then you have to pay me for guaranteeing me that you will never do this again. So in all these things, and you have restitution, if it's possible, amongst others. You have compensation, you have rehabilitation. Have we been rehabilitated? If we are to be rehabilitated again, you have to pay for that. So it involves several components that are not only that do not only speak to compensation, amongst others. And in the Namibian context, they are only now talking about compensation, which is not even referred to as reparations, but as projects. And that is really insulting, like we have said, because international law states that the primary responsibility of reparations is that of the state, meaning that the Namibian government also has a hand in it. And the Namibian government has to come in through means of restitution, for instance, because the land is not in Germany, the land is here. And rehabilitation, also to rehabilitate its people that have endured these horrendous events. So these both states have a responsibility to these affected communities. And it is more than just compensation, right?
The OTA and the NTLA recently had a joint press conference where court action was being considered or will be put into action in terms of how the Namibian government
response.
The Namibian government's handling has been of the genocide matter. What is the significance of this proposed development, in your opinion? What is it anticipated to potentially change?
The Namibian courts have not, the Namibian jurisprudence in general has not yet been put to test in regards to cases of this nature. It is very important that all jurisdictions necessary or relating to this case are explored. It is very significant because it's the first of its kind. It's the first of its kind that has happened, and it's just said that it is only happening 30 years after independence. So this is, because it's the first of its kind, it is going to set precedents not only in Namibia, but in all African countries especially, or in the parts of the world where crimes of this nature has happened. So it is very important. Today you see how liberation movements today that are governing African countries in particular, basically really are in cahoots with the West that have oppressed us before. And so as much as we are holding the West accountable, we also need to bring that into our domestic jurisdictions, put our courts to test so that even the African governments can also then be accountable to these people, that this crime was perpetrated to us. We lost land, we lost life, we lost resources, and today we are disadvantaged in this manner. So what are you as our government going to do about it? who were colonized by the white government. At that time, we couldn't do anything. But you that has taken over now, what are you going to do about it? Since you have this significant role to play. So it's of quite great significance. And it's really, really just exciting to see how traditional authorities in Namibia are completely underrated. They are completely disregarded. Really, they don't even just get, even if it's just a small allocation, a budget to implement whatever development or whatever it is necessary that you have to develop or do or contribute in their areas. But when you see traditional authorities emerge more than just giving land and other things that are roles that are accorded to them by the law and stepping up to causes like this, it is really quite impressive, and that in itself is part of the significant roles that this case has to bring to the Namibian jurisprudence. Right?
Joyce, thank you for that. Obviously, there are additional questions that I'd like to follow up on, but before we go into that, I'd like to call for a short commercial break, so do stay tuned. We'll be back shortly.
3, 2, 1.
We Talk brings you community news that lies at the heart of Windhoek residents. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact wetalk@synergy.com.na. You live, we talk.
Bookings for Namibia Tourism Expo 2022 are open. The expo will take place from 3 to 5 November 2022 in Windhoek. To secure your booking, visit nte.nmh.com.na, and for more information on the expo, follow all Namibia Media Holdings platforms. The expo is supported by the Ministry of Environment, Tourism and Forestry, Namibia Tourism Board, FENATA, City of Windhoek, and Namibia Media Holdings. Namibia Tourism Expo, taking tourism to the regions.
The Regional Review brings you news, views, and interviews from NMH correspondents from across the country. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact regional@synergy.com.na.
Welcome back to the Evening Review. Now, Joyce, at the press conference held 2-3 weeks ago, the NTLA OTA conference, we also saw LPM leader Bernardo Swarboy comment on these issues. My question now is the LPM involved? And if they're involved, what is the level of involvement and what is the rationale why the LPM is involved, if so?
I don't know why you are calling it an NTLA and OTA press conference, because the reason why the press conference was called is basically it was a press conference to be addressed by the tripartite forces that are serving as the applicants, that are serving as applicants in the letter written to the AG. So basically, it was a joint press conference by the three that are going to be applicants should they go to court. Yes. So basically, LPM there, like the letter
now the
stated,
three would be?
It's LPM, OTA, so it's LPM. Basically, it's Honorable Bernardo Swarboy as an MP, because then he was elected in the National Assembly then to represent all Namibians. So him, Honorable Swarboy as an MP, will serve that purpose as a primary applicant. And then you have the OTA, the traditional authority, and then you have the NTLA, in association of 10 Nama traditional leaders. Yes. So we are very much part of the joint application to court, should it, that will be filed depending on the response of the AG.
Mm.
Honorable Swarwe plays, or LPM in general, plays a very vital role in this case, because you need a political force, you need a political representation there, which Honorable Swarwe then serves as the primary applicant, and then you have the two traditional authorities that represent the affected communities. So this then plays quite a significant role, of course, in numerous ways. But the LPM there, as a party in parliament that was voted for by the people, primarily from the people that are, the party also constitutes of a broad membership of the people that come from the affected communities. Mm-hmm. So as a political entity, we are there, and then you have the two traditional authorities that solely represent and directly represent the affected communities. I don't know if I answered your question correctly. Yes.
So one should not look at, should one then not perhaps maybe, with we are 2.5 years away from the polls.
Yes.
Should now one not look at this as a means of the LPM perhaps trying to gain support not only from its voter base, but spreading beyond that? Probably also amongst members of the OTA.
Well, when you look at the history of the formation of LPM, Okhone, if one knows that history very well, you will understand that immediately when Honorable Swarwe left the SWAPO party, or when he left the SWAPO party, or when he was fired as deputy minister, the very first communities to receive him was the community of OTA. The press conference that he had to denounce SWAPO, to denounce his SWAPO membership, was at the Commando Hall owned by the OTA. So the history goes long back. Honorable Swarwe is the first Nama to visit the heritage site in Oshinene called Odombulo Vindimba, where Lothar von Toda issued the extermination order against the Overhero people in 1904. He is the very first hero, first Nama, first of Nama descent to visit that place there. And this was at the time when LPM was still a movement. And he is again the very first Nama to go to Aminus amongst the Herero communities for the commemorations that take place there. So the relationship has has nothing to do with the votes, really. It's basically just sustaining a relationship that has been there from the onset. So if one is going to perceive it through the lens of the polls or the elections, trying to basically use this as an election ploy, I think it will be a very narrow and an uninformed perception, because there is a long-lasting relationship there that has not just started because of this and because we are 2 years away from the elections years.
And then lastly, we saw recently that German delegation of the Bundestag met with Parliament Speaker Peter Kashavivi. Now, while the details of that meeting, the complete details, while the complete details, or while one would not know the
they
complete
remain
agenda,
unknown. Yeah.
while one would not know the complete agenda of the meeting, does this bite confidence in government's ability, or does this display confidence in government's ability? Are you confident that the interests of the affected communities are being communicated very well?
The relations between the two governments on the genocide have started an erroneous process that yielded erroneous results from the onset. Everything was confidential. Everything was strictly confidential. Not once will you hear the committee going to Germany, coming back and having a press conference or having meetings with the affected communities, saying that colleagues, or saying to the communities, this is what is being said, what should we say? Never. The chiefs fought so hard for them to even just be given feedback. The chiefs that were with the government that had to leave the government's committee and to start fending for their own. So this whole thing was just strictly confidential. And the fact that it is between the two states without direct involvement of the affected communities is very problematic. So whatever the speaker is doing, with whoever he is doing it, really, at the end of the day, why should we as the affected communities, or why should the affected communities really even basically want to be interested in whatever the speakers are doing? Because it does not involve them. It is not from them. The communities did not send the speaker to articulate whatever issues that they need to with the members of the Bodenstag. It was not even announced that the members of the Bodenstag are coming. What should we say? To even just call the traditional leaders and ask, what should we say? Why should the traditional leaders be SWAPO members or be affiliated or have a working relationship with the government for them to be involved in whatever that pertains to genocide talks? It's not right. So what the speaker is doing, maybe it's on the level of it's based on the bilateral relations between the two governments, and the speaker was adamant on a relationship, on a friendship, as it is quoted in the papers, between the two parliaments. So that really is up to them. But it still remains that the genocide issue is always handled in a confidential manner between the two governments. The joint declaration, for instance, was leaked to us. It was leaked to us. It was not presented to us. It was leaked to us. And we hear there that in the Prime Minister's office there and in the executive that they were mad as to how did that document get here. It was leaked. It was not even presented by them. And the so-called traditional authorities that were apparently serving as advisors. And this proves that these people were not even involved, that the ones that served as advisors were mad because they had no clue that there was a joint declaration and that it was having a quantum of 18 billion. So this whole thing really is just conducted in so much secrecy while it should be community-based. And that is why this further then affirms the claims made by the communities that they are not involved in this process. They are not involved in this process. And so hopefully really the government will just one day come to their senses, stop with whatever it is that they are doing because it is rubbish. They need to involve the communities, and this secrecy has to stop. It has to stop. The process needs to be done in accordance with international law. A reparations process has to start, and the Namibian state has its own role in this that it has to also play. So it all really is just havoc, and it has to be fixed ASAP.
Thank you very much for joining us and returning to studio.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Evening Review. Have yourself a pleasant weekend.